Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with another episode today. I'm thrilled to have with me back Holly White-Gehrt, and for the first time, Marnie Bethel to both talk about the Hill Country Atelier. Ladies, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for coming down and visiting with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Holly, I can't remember if this is the second or third time you've been on the show. Second time. The last time we visited, either this was a very big gleam in your eye or you were just starting. But why don't you sort of bring us up to date? Because I know you've had some big developments.
It was kind of both. We'd already been doing this for 6 years, but we were starting out on our own. So since I was here, we have completed our first school year in our new location and then as our own nonprofit organization.
So where's the location?
It's at 741 Water Street, which is where Earl Garrett dead ends into Water Street, right there where that pavilion is.
And how many students did you have the first year?
We had this year, it was our 7th year and our first year both. I think we started with 11
I think
in the
that's right.
fall,
Yeah.
and there's normally a little drop off, but we have a capacity of 12 just barely in our location right now. So we did pretty well.
What did having this new space mean for you and the atelier?
It meant that we could have multiple programming and
Yeah.
the weekend programming.
Yes. And being able to host life drawing twice a week on Tuesdays and Saturdays and have some other external programming that you've added on, I know, and being able to host like longer workshops and things like that. But because we have our own space now, so we don't have to schedule around anybody else. It's
Yes.
really nice.
Big difference there.
Uh-huh.
So we have the core program like we had for 6 years, but we've added workshops from out of town guests, and we have a landscape painting program. Marnie has been a student for how many years?
I've been with the atelier now for 3 years. And and I've taken 2 iterations of landscape painting that have been available this spring. And that's been just fabulous. That's a new addition because it's not really part of the atelier curriculum per se, but it's a wonderful addition to it and just a marvelous learning opportunity.
Holly, what is the curriculum?
Let me back up and give you the layout of the whole thing. So what we try to do is offer from full-time to drop-in. So from a 3 to 4 year program, which we call our core atelier. Then we have classes, which are in a particular category. They're 5 weeks at a time. Then we have workshops that are 4 days at a time, and often an out-of-town artist will come teach that. And then we have drop-ins on Saturday. It was 3 hours at a time. We have that full range of offerings. So what was your question?
Oh, it was about the offerings
Okay.
that you have. And Marnie, how did you start with the atelier?
I found myself, like a lot of people, my life got somewhat upended during the pandemic, and I found myself back in Kerr County where I hadn't been for a while. And I, by chance, happened to meet Holly and another one of her former students, Linda Harp, at the Hill Country Arts Foundation at the Arts and Crafts Fair 3 years ago, and found out what they were doing. And I was so excited because I had just retired from my career as a teacher out in New Mexico, and I had always wanted to study art. And all of a sudden, I had this wonderful chance fall into my lap. It was amazing. And I signed up then, and I've never looked back.
So you mentioned the landscape class,
Uh-huh.
but can you take us through your curriculum as a student at the atelier?
Oh, sure. Because I started at the beginning. The very first day I went into class, and I had gone out and bought the materials I was supposed to get. And I took out my pencils to draw. And one of the other students looked at them and said, "Oh," and she took away my pencil sharpener and said, "Let me show you how we sharpen pencils." So that was my first lesson, was learning how to sharpen a pencil with a razor and sandpaper. And there's a good reason for doing that. There's a lot of technique that involves having a longer lead on it and what have you. But I like to say I began it as an absolute beginner because I didn't know how to sharpen a pencil. But let's see, I first started out drawing from life every week. We have models every week. And so I would be drawing a human figure at least once a week. But then the rest of the time I was drawing copies basically of images that were created in the 19th century. They're called bark plates after a painter named Charles Bark. And they images that we copy to learn how to basically control our pencils and to learn how to copy accurately. And so I started out doing those. And then as I progressed, I moved on to drawing three-dimensional objects. A sphere was a really big deal.
Casts, the classical casts
Yeah,
that we have.
casts of classical statues. And when you're learning to draw in the Atelier system, one of the things that you do is you learn how to pay very close attention to what you're seeing. And it's like training your eyes to work in a totally different way. And learning to see in that way strongly affects the way that you draw. And I now have drawings that I've done that look sort of like black and white photographs because they're that detailed. And that's sort of a simplification of what I'm
Accurate.
doing.
I
But they're
like
very-
to say accurate.
they have to be very accurate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so and Holly's a very demanding teacher. She makes you put in the time, spend the time to get it right.
It
But-
sounds terrible, but
No,
the
but-
point is that I'll take you
Mhm.
to places you didn't think you could go.
Exactly. And I didn't have any formal art training before I started this program. But now I've moved on. In the second year, I moved on to doing, let's see, grisaille, is that
Mhm.
right? Which is painting in black and white. And the reason we do that is, once again, learning to train your eyes so that you can see how dark or how light things are without having to learn how to handle color yet. And now I paint in color. And that's been really huge. And so I've been doing landscapes. And then I just finished a workshop with a wonderful visiting painter, Tanaya Sims from Seattle, who came down here to teach a week-long workshop.
He was my teacher in Seattle.
I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yes. you did.
And
Good.
yeah, and he's incredible. And he's won many awards. He's collected all over the world. He's really quite something. And he was here in Kerrville teaching us how to paint faces, basically. And so that's where I am now. But yeah. So so it's a progressive curriculum. You keep learning new skills and adding on to what you've learned in the beginning.
So tell me about the landscapes.
Oh, the landscapes are fun. We do those with a wonderful gentleman named Roger Parsons. He lives in San Antonio, and he is a longtime friend of the Atelier. And he's a nationally recognized painter. He's won some awards from the Western Landscape. It's a group that does paintings of the American West, basically. And he's absolutely wonderful. But he has taught 2 5-week workshops or 5-week classes at the Atelier that I've taken. And the first one was what's called a plein air workshop. And that means that we took our easels out in different locations here in Kerr County, and we were painting elements of landscape while we're sitting out there looking at them, which is the same thing Monet did. And it's really challenging. It's really interesting. You have to deal with a lot of variables that you don't have to deal with in a studio. And that is also kind of going into the deep end because we work with color and different ways of composing a picture and what have you. And then the second class that I took from him was in the studio. And that was a class basically in composing and painting an entire landscape, this time from photographs, and learning how to manipulate paint and color and brush strokes and all of those things to make a convincing picture. And Roger's pretty much the top quality person to learn that from. He's great.
So Holly, where do you see in the rest of 2024 and maybe into 2025, 2026?
We're right now on a campaign to get known and exposure. And I've been thinking about what we offer is really fundamental for any kind of painter or drawer. It doesn't matter what the genre is. And I think we need to get that message out more. It's just basic drawing, which is really fundamental to any artist. Basic values, very fundamental. Basic color, fundamental. Roger comes from the same place. Roger Parsons, our landscape painter. So they're So my goal right now is to get that exposure more about we are not a type of painting. We are not a style. We offered the fundamentals, the basic fundamentals that all artists need. So next year, we're starting with our program again, our second year in our new location with the Corps. We have several artists lined up to teach next summer. What we're really hoping will happen in the next 12 months or so is that we'll move into our new space.
So tell us about that. I thought you had moved into your new space.
We are in our new building. We're in a temporary suite. We want to move 2 doors down to a bigger suite after we get it built out to spec. That we've had these architectural drawings for over a year now. But what's happening is kind of exciting, and it's delayed us a little bit, but half the building was sold to Clint Orms. And I think that happened since I was here last. And very unusual to split the ownership of it. But as they're doing a huge change there, we lost an exit, an egress, and the city won't let us build until we have a new fire exit. So we're on hold to get through I think we got through the permitting process. Now we're in an engineering process to get that exit. And once all that is done, we can begin with our build out.
What's this new space going to bring to the LTA?
It will bring a room enough to have concurrent programs. So right now we stagger them through the week. But when we move there, we can have a workshop happening at the same time that the Atelier students are in their individual studios. Everybody gets their own studio if they're a core Atelier student. But we can have the classes and workshops going on in the same moment in another room. We don't have space for that right now. That will be a big change for us.
That will be. If any of our listeners wanted to get any more information on the Texas Hill Country Atelier, where would be the best place for them to go?
We keep our website up to date. Go to our website, texashillcountryatelier.org, and browse through there, and then sign up for our newsletter that comes out not too frequently. We also have a blog that we send out, and you can go look at the blogs there. Marnie's written a blog post for us. But we keep everything up to date on that. And also you can write us if you have any questions.
What was your blog post on, Marnie?
I wrote about why I'm doing this.
Excellent. And why are you doing it?
Like I said, I'd always wanted to study art and I never had the chance. But also, as Holly was pointing out, this is a program that is unique in that it's not teaching me a particular style. It's not teaching me to be like Holly when I paint. It's not teaching me to limit myself to certain subjects or techniques. Instead, it is a solid grounding in the fundamentals of making art. It's wonderful.
Is there anything I didn't get to that you wanted to talk about, Holly?
What did we want to talk about? Why we called ourselves Texas Hill Country Atelier? We talked about that for a moment.
Yes.
We started out Hill Country Atelier. That's what we had been called for a long time. And we added the Texas after a friend in Alabama recommended it. He'll come teach a workshop next summer. But he said that across the country, there are several hill country areas. But you want to call yourselves Texas Hill Country in part because he's a farmer. He's a full-time farmer. And he's an artist, a brilliant artist. But he said there's a whole contingency of artists in the flyover country. And they don't want to go to New York or San Francisco or Seattle for art training.
But they can come here.
If it's Texas and it's in a small town, Texas Hill Country, heck yeah. We're very proud to transcend those boundaries of political and other divisions.
Yeah.
But the art has always transcended those social economic boundaries, and we really aspire to that and maintain that.
Yeah.
So,
how would you all assess the local art scene in Kerrville or Kerr County?
it's good. It's active. It's regional. It's very local. It's not yet on the national scene. And that's what I'd like to bring here is nationally known artists. There's a whole network of artists that I would love for our artists to connect with and realize they're part of a national and actually international movement. So we're not limited in that way. I really want to to offer that to all artists locally. And we have, and we do. And we have, because we bring in somebody like Tanaya Sims, who can teach anywhere in the country, it's expensive. And we have some brilliant donors who help make scholarships for local artists. So that's a big part of our goal, is to make it available for locals without lowering our standards. So it's a little tricky. That's why we're a nonprofit. We depend on our donors to make that possible.
And also from a student perspective, I just want to say that Holly says it's expensive. It's expensive to do what she's doing, bringing in these people and putting all of her time and energy into running the atelier. But from a student perspective, the tuition is surprisingly affordable, and that feels like a really lucky thing to have happen, is that I was able to come into this program and I was able to afford it. And that just makes me really happy, because many art programs all over the country and all over the world cost as much or more as ordinary college tuition, like private college tuition. And that can be prohibitively expensive. But the Texas Hill Country Atelier is, I'm happy to say, much more affordable than that.
Okay.
So that,
Yeah.
and
Wonderful.
accessibility is key.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Ladies, unfortunately, we're near the end of our time for this episode, but I wanted to thank you both for coming down to visit with us. It's really intrigued with what you all have going on, and I can't wait to see the next iteration.
Thank you so much for having us, Tom.
Thank you.